From the moment I got engaged 11 years ago, I knew I wanted to make my own wedding cake, which I did. But there's a lot more to making wedding cakes than you might expect. So here are 10 tips to help you successfully make a wedding cake. Of course, wedding cakes need to be beautiful, but they also need to taste delicious. So before the big day, it's important that the couple taste different options of cakes, fillings, and frosting. When I had a cake shop, I would provide cupcake versions of my cake menu for customers to try before choosing the flavour for their cake, or set up a mini cupcake tasting session, which was really popular. For wedding cakes, I made mini cakes of each flavour, which are a lot more time-consuming to make, but they're also more formal, and they're a more accurate representation of the cake to filling to frosting ratio. If you make lots of wedding cakes and do lots of tastings, you might choose to bake entire cakes and slice them up and give couples a slice of each flavour. And then you can wrap up the remaining slices in 2 layers of cling film or plastic wrap each and freeze them until the next tasting. Once you know the date of the wedding and the details of the cake, you'll need to establish a timeline. Wedding cakes can take several days to make depending on the flavours, size, and decorations. You'll need to shop for all of your ingredients. You will already have bought any cake decorating tools you'll need and packaging supplies. Then a few days before the wedding, you might make your fillings and frosting. And on the next day, you might bake your cake layers. On the next day, you might assemble your cakes and frost them, and stack them if it's a tier cake. And then on the next day, you might add decorations, which could be the morning of the wedding, depending on what those decorations are. For tier cakes, you'll typically want every tier to be the same height, which is easiest to get right before you assemble the cake, by stacking the layers for each tier side by side to check they're all the same height. Trim any of the layers now using a serrated knife if you need to make any of the cakes a bit shorter. If you're not going to serve the cake on the same day you bake it, which is almost always the case for wedding cakes since they take so long to make, I really recommend using simple syrup on your cakes. This keeps cakes moist. It doesn't make them soggy, and it also won't make a dry cake moist. It just prolongs the fresh texture of a cake. Use equal parts of sugar and water, this is a cup of each, and bring to a simmer to dissolve the sugar, and then let it cool. That's it. As you drizzle or brush it over your cake layers, pay special attention to the edges of the cakes, because those will dry out the quickest. Wedding cakes are traditionally white, which can be problematic for buttercream made with butter, which is yellow. You have a few options to make buttercream white. You can add violet gel, which will cancel out the yellow tint with just a tiny amount. Dipping a toothpick into the bottle is the safest choice rather than trying to squeeze a very small drop and accidentally ending up with purple buttercream. For really white buttercream, use vegetable shortening like Crisco or Trex, and if the cake is going to be on a white tablecloth, this is the best option because even slightly off-white buttercream will look yellow compared to a bright white background. If the cake will be on a wooden tabletop or a coloured tablecloth, using butter with a bit of violet should be fine. As a bonus, if the wedding is outside in warm weather and you don't want your cake to melt like this, using shortening in your buttercream will make it more stable than just butter. Whatever decorations you're adding to the cake, it's definitely a good idea to practice them before making the actual wedding cake. This doesn't mean you have to make an exact replica as a trial run, which would be a huge investment of time and ingredients. Instead, you can practice each element on different cakes, assuming you have months to prepare for the wedding cake. Practice stacking another tier cake, or ideally several, until you feel really confident. Practice using cake stencils on another cake for another occasion before you use a stencil on the wedding cake. Practice borders using the same size and shape piping tip to get used to the technique, and any other piped details. You'll learn the amount of pressure you need to use when you squeeze the piping bag, the wrist motion, the position that's most comfortable for you, and so on, so that by the time you pipe onto the wedding cake, you're not trying to figure out all of those things. My very first wedding cake was for one of my best friends, and I had never made a tier cake before, so I practiced on a tea party cake for another friend, and this snowman cake, just to get some practice on how to stack a tier cake. Okay, next up. Sometimes people want a 5-tier cake for their very small wedding, and in these situations, cake dummies are really useful to prevent huge amounts of uneaten cake and also to save money. Use these fake cakes for extra tiers, decorating them as if they were real cake, and no one will ever know what's really inside. For fresh flowers, wait until the day of the wedding if possible, so that the flowers don't wilt. And group flowers together in little bunches and wrap the straws in plastic wrap or cling film to prevent floral juices leaking out into the cake. Poke them into straws like these wide boba straws, trimming them to the length of the stems, which should only be 1 or 2 inches, and then push them into the cake. You can buy these flower cake spikes instead, which do the same thing. Refrigerate cakes until you transport them to the wedding venue to keep the frosting firm and the tiers stable enough for the journey. When you transport the cake, choose a flat surface, like the boot or trunk of the car, or the footwell in front of the passenger seat, not any of the seats in the car because those are sloped at an incline. For tier cakes, it's especially important to be on a flat surface so that they don't lean or slide or topple over. As you can see, making a wedding cake is a lot of work, so if this isn't a gift, make sure you price your wedding cakes to make a profit instead of losing money. I have a very detailed free tutorial on how to price your cakes with all of the information you'll need and a free cost calculator. The link is in the top of the screen and in the video description. I've helped over 20,000 people improve their cake decorating skills on my cake school, and lots of them have made wedding cakes for themselves, their friends and family members, or for customers. If you would like to improve your cake decorating skills, join my All-You-Can-Cake membership to access all of my online courses and to ask me any questions you have directly. If you're interested in seeing how I made this video, keep watching for the behind-the-scenes footage. I had to do this in one day because I like to share a new video every Tuesday and I had a sick toddler at home with me all week. So I got up at 5:30 before the kids, typed out the title that had been running through my head all night, and wrote down some bullet points of the tips I wanted to include in this video. Next, the most time-consuming part, I looked for videos of previous cakes to use to demonstrate every tip. And since I currently have 25 external hard drives of 4 terabytes each, this took a long time. I realized I needed a bit more footage, so I did some last-minute filming on how to make simple syrup, and then filled in my script with all of the details. I use a script to make sure I include all of the important details. So next, I recorded myself reading the script, and then I use that script as the voiceover, syncing up all of the video clips so that they happen at the same time as I'm talking about them. Once the video is edited, which takes several hours, I upload it to YouTube and also put a written version on my website for anyone who prefers to read it instead of watch it. Next comes several editing variations for social media, and if you're interested in all of this, you will love my course on content creation, which teaches you how to become a content creator about any topic that you're interested in. Join the waiting list by clicking the link up in the top of the screen or in the video description. Thanks for watching.